small group today. I am still working out of the basement. We are 6 weeks in, and hopefully I'll soon be able to brush my teeth somewhere other than the kitchen sink. But this has been a great test of how we get up each day and we keep going. And so it really plays nicely into positioning your day and your mindset, because I am getting to live and experience a lot of stressors associated with that right now. And as we all know, we have the best intentions about things, right? We have the best intentions about working out and eating right and positioning our day by having a morning routine. And only when the rubber hits the road, right? Only when life gets rocky, either a little rocky or a lot rocky, do you really get to test whether or not you're going to be implementing and continuing to keep up with a habit that you've established. So this has been a really great experience for me to continue to test that. And I appreciate everybody's patience while I remain in the basement office area. So, all right. So we're talking about mindset, positioning your day and positioning your mindset. Welcome, Angela. And we have this amazing opportunity every morning to get up and to position our brain for what we want to think and how we want to be and how we want to embody ourselves during the day. Because the truth is, our thoughts are our habits, right? They are habits that in time become beliefs because they're habits, because we continuously reinforce them. So, and I am by no means, I want to make this very clear, I'm by no means saying that you can cure depression or move through really difficult, challenging situations by just thinking positive thoughts. That is not what I am trying to say. But what I am trying to say is that mindset is critical, because it's the process through which, or the means through which, we process and reprocess events that we go through in our lives, how we move throughout our day. And that matters because ultimately it shapes our emotional experience. Now, that's a very simplistic way of looking at things, and there's always nuances. But when you are looking at how do I move in the world and how do I want to move in the world, this is where focusing on your mindset can become really powerful. If we simply take the example of a scarcity of time mindset, the mindset of I never have enough time to get through everything I want to do in the day, and the feeling associated with that. That feeling brings us through the cycle of thinking and experiencing the feeling of not having enough time, and it perpetuates that feeling of lack. Whereas if we acknowledge that, yes, I am a diverse human, there is more that I want to do in the world and today than I could ever possibly get done. And I can prioritize, I can delegate, I can acknowledge that certain things won't get done. And when things get thrown at me out of left field, I can reprioritize, redelegate, acknowledge that there's a different list of priorities and things that may not get done. That type of a mindset shift allows us to be a bit more nimble, to recognize that, to be practical in the sense that it's true. You probably don't have enough time for everything that you want to do. Most people do not. And that's not a bad problem to have. That means we've got a lot of amazing things going on in our lives, and we can prioritize what's most important to us. It puts us back in the driver's seat of knowing what we want to do and taking ownership for that. Whereas if we sit and wallow and continue to perpetuate that feeling of lack of time mindset, that scarcity, then we see less and less opportunities for prioritizing and delegating and acknowledging that certain things won't get done. Instead, we just feel the sense of lack. So I'm going to just pause and see if there are any initial questions about that, or if anybody here has ever experienced that feeling of a scarcity of time mindset, I just can't ever get it all done.
I feel like that's normal. Yeah, I feel like That's my normal way of acting is like, oh, wow, there's not enough time to get done all these things I want to do.
And when you feel that, do you feel an overwhelm? Like,
Mm.
it's, I can't do it all, so I might as well give it up. Or do you feel like it's more of a practical acknowledgement that I'm awesome and there's a lot of things I would really like to do?
It depends on how much stuff I've overcommitted to.
Yeah.
Because I think both of those, I'm actually happiest when I'm almost maxed out.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a very delicate balance between almost maxed out and beyond maxed out. And I never give up. I always think I can do it.
That you always think you can add more to almost maxed out and not get to completely maxed out?
No, like when I get overwhelmed, like it never goes along with a resignation of, oh, I'll never finish that.
Right.
It always goes along with this lie of tomorrow I will finish that.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Well, there's so much there and it's amazing. And so I think that you've really hit the nail on the head that there are times where, or again, to the scarcity of time mindset, you can know that you have more to do than you could ever get done. And that doesn't mean that you're in a scarcity of time mindset. That doesn't mean that you're in a vicious cycle that can actually be a stress cycle and lead to burnout. Instead, you can acknowledge that there's a lot you want to do and you simply can't get to all of it right away. And I find it interesting that you say that you can tell yourself a lie that you'll get to it tomorrow, because possibly you could get to it tomorrow, but you're already saying that's a lie. So I would love to, talk another time about what that is for you and why it's already a lie before you even say it.
Well, because I can only, so that's the way I handle it is I try to prioritize like a couple of really priority things and those things get done.
Yes.
But there are always the wish list and those things get chipped away at, but they're not going to get done tomorrow.
Right. And I would even think that when you say, so I lie to myself or I tell myself the lie that it will get done tomorrow, you're really not telling yourself the lie. You're just saying, or tomorrow may even be an analogy for they will get done in the future, right? It's not today. Yes. All right. Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. And this is just one example of mindset, right? The scarcity of time mindset is one that commonly comes up because we women are juggling so much, right? We've got jobs, we've got hobbies, we've got families, we've got spiritual commitments, we've got community commitments. There is so much on our plate. So that is one example that I wanted to give of how when you're feeling that feeling of overwhelm associated with having too much, not acknowledging that you're having too much, but rather feeling that feeling of overwhelm, recognizing that that is where your mindset is, and recognizing that you have the power in that situation to start to revise your thinking, to start to train your brain to have new neural network connections that actually look at time differently, that acknowledge that there's an amazing plethora of things you want to do, and that's incredible. And you're going to have to prioritize, delegate, acknowledge that some things will get done tomorrow, even if tomorrow means 6 years from now. So that's a great example, Melanie. Thanks for bringing that up. And when we think about mindset and when we are best positioned to be positively looking at our mindset and evaluating our state of mind and what we want to think and feel throughout the day, the best time is in the morning. We are hopefully not very fatigued we've gotten a good night's sleep, right? That doesn't always happen, but very often it can. And we are hopefully waking ourselves up and starting to position ourselves in the world without letting the world jump on our screens, right? So it's so easy with social media, with our phones being our alarm clocks, with having streaming 24-hour news, that we are just immediately bombarded. And so by preventing that immediate bombardment, even by 5 or 10 minutes, can allow you and is a huge tool to position your mindset where you want it to be. And the more that you practice doing that first thing in the morning, the more that you practice saying, I want to move through the world today feeling like this, or the more that you are practicing a gratitude mindset by first and foremost in your day, appreciating all of the amazing things that you have in your world, or perhaps you have a devotional that turning to that first thing in the morning actually opens you up to being in the right mindset for the day. The more that we practice that, the more resilient we are when the world comes at us. Once we, go off airplane mode or turn on our computer, are better positioned because we have taken a few minutes to position our mindset. This is true of parents with young children, right? I myself cringe whenever my kids somehow make it up before I do in the morning, because I need that time to position my mindset. I need that time before they're clamoring all over me and needing things for me to know how I want to move in the world. And it's become an essential practice that has been critical to weathering all that life throws at you, right? And it's part of a resilience package, right? There are so many things that we can do to build resilience so that we don't get into burnout. And mindset and focusing on your mindset and positioning your mindset in the morning is one of the most impactful and truthfully one of the easiest things to do, because it does only take a couple of minutes each morning. So I'm going to pause again and just see if there's any questions about the positioning of mindset in the morning and why that perhaps is important and a more powerful practice than trying to do it every day at the end of the day. Doesn't look like there's any questions right now. Janessa, are any questions coming in? I'm trying to see the feed.
No questions coming through yet.
No questions coming in. Okay, great. All right. So what can you do? If this makes sense, if this is resonating, if you've thought, yes, there have been a few days recently where I've just gotten up and I've been in a crummy mood and I've let that crummy mood continue, or I got up anxious because I knew there was so much to do and I felt anxious, therefore, the rest of the day, or you knew that there was a meeting coming up that you were stressed about. What can you be doing to position your mindset differently? Well, we mentioned a gratitude practice. Focusing on what we're grateful for can really help us to look at the world differently, right? When we are feeling as though our problems are really big and then we take a few minutes to think about all that we have and all that we're grateful for, that shifts where our brain is focusing and where there's a lot of energy being spent, right? We're no longer more in the primal system of our brain, but we're moving to the frontal cortex. And that's really what we want to engage. So even just you're waking up and for some reason you're feeling a little lousy, you think it's going to be a rough day, whatever reason, just take a few minutes to write down a few things that you're grateful for. And then from there, think about why you are experiencing these feelings. Where is that coming from? There are sources for all of this. And it's very easy to blame an external source. That's a really easy way to manage an emotion. And then if we recognize that this is an emotion that we're feeling and that we can actually think about how we'd like to approach this in a more positive way, or set ourselves up to actually enjoy what we're going through and move through the day, then again, you are taking that emotion and you're acknowledging it and you're saying, and I want to feel this, and I want to think this. And it can apply to so many different things. It can apply to, moving your body, getting to your workout. Perhaps you're like waking up and it's going to be another day that you don't hit the gym. And that makes you kind of feel like crap. And as a result, you want to go get a donut on your way to work and have extra cream in your coffee and do all of the things that you don't want to do, or that you ultimately don't want to do, but that you're going to do because you're coping with that feeling of kind of feeling like crap about not going to the gym. Well, maybe you wake up, you're grateful for the fact that you can move in your body, that you have other alternatives. You acknowledge that you're not going to go to the gym. And instead you decide to just now take a quick 5-minute walk. Better than nothing, right? That is another example of reframing your mindset about something. very often, I'll work with clients in acute situations where they're going through a really stressful time at work, where they're going into the office, they're working towards some critical deadline, and it's just craziness. And they've been doing this now day in and day out, and they're wondering how they can wake up and look at things differently. They no longer want to say it's always at the end of this project, I'm going to take care of myself. Once we get this book in, I'm going to take care of myself. I will relax when we deliver XYZ. Putting that off is a form of not listening to our own mindset, not figuring out how we can live and move in the world in which we're currently operating, right? It's deferring our pleasure to the future. And that's not good for our mindset either. So in the example of in this situation where people, are waking up and you're feeling the stress from a job come on again, can you be looking at it that morning before you turn on your computer, before you call in for that first meeting, and instead be working to reframe your mindset that, yes, this is another stressful project. This is a huge deliverable. We are behind because of X, Y, and Z. And these are the things that I can accomplish today. And everything else I'm going to delegate or acknowledge won't get done. That is the type of mindset shift that leads to women and other individuals having more executive presence because they're not feeling the overwhelm. They are establishing at the beginning of their day and positioning their mindset so that they're going into what they know will be a stressful situation because it is recurring as a stressful situation, but they are going in with a different mindset. And now this does not happen overnight, right? It takes practice. You may wake up one morning ready to try this and you try something, and within a couple of minutes, it's out the window, right? You've opened up your computer and emails and you've gotten some text messages and, oh my gosh, all of that calm that I wanted to bring to today, all of those priorities out the window. Keep going. What I said in the beginning still holds true, right? Our beliefs are the habits of our thoughts. And some of these beliefs and thoughts have been ingrained in us from childhood. Some we've taken through our last 20 years in the work environment. We have perpetuated and sort of, to use the analogy of a rut, we keep digging that hole, right? We keep going down and reinforcing the chemical pathway of basically that rut via neurotransmitters. And we're trying to form a new one now. You all, I'm sure, have been on a bike where there's a crevice and you're like, avoid the crevice, avoid the crevice. It's really hard not to fall into it, right? Give your brain and your being that grace that it's going to take a long time and it's going to take continuous practice to build yourself a new path. But it is completely possible to build yourself a new path. All right, I'm going to pause one more time for questions. Or any other thoughts about this before we open it up for any ad hoc coaching that anybody would like? Quiet group today. All right. Any ad hoc coaching, Angela or Melanie, anything that you would like to bring up that it can be completely unrelated to what we talked about with morning mindset and positioning your day. But if there's anything that's on your mind, we're here for this.
I would just reiterate what you've been talking about. I love this topic and completely agree. The morning time is super important to just starting off fresh. And I love the last part that I just heard too. Sorry, I ducked out for a minute. My kids were arguing. But the last part that I just caught of how, as leaders, when we get this well under control and oiled, then it really truly does translate into how others perceive us, how our day, I think it's a ripple effect, right? Like when you've gotten control of how you're going to respond, because I think mornings, there is that sort of conflict of wanting to be productive and get some things knocked out right away. Like checking email while you're eating breakfast or whatever your morning routine may look like. And so there's that conflict of like, I have this quiet time. I kind of want to just like chunk away or be productive before I hit the office. And then 50 things are thrown at my face. If you're arriving in person, or that first Zoom meeting, or whatever it might be that your official workday brings you, as a leader, it typically doesn't ever go as you planned your day. And so wanting to get things done that you know you can control in that time is really tempting. But I know that in my evolution of leadership, when I got really good at what you just said of not looking at things on my phone first, when I hit, snooze or dismiss on the alarm, and just putting my mental space, for me, it is that act of intention or that gratitude of just like, I'm here to serve for this day. Like, let's see how do you want me to serve? What will this day bring that I can do, and to make a positive impact? And just making that my first thought of the day has made a huge difference in how I was able to handle the stuff that came through the day. And I was able to still, like you said, it doesn't need a lot of time. It's just like those first 5 minutes, for sometimes, depending on what my morning reading was, it would go into longer, like 30 minutes or whatever, because it would just really resonate and be something I wanted to journal about or whatever. But other times it was just 5 minutes. But that consistent practice really made an impact in how I was able to handle what came through my day, but also my own sense of control of like, because I knew like, okay, well, this is working in the morning because I feel this much better on my way to work. And then I would use that same mindset or that same practice as things would crop up throughout my day. And then by the end of the day, it was like, okay, that actually really wasn't that bad. But then when you go tell a colleague about what happened during the day, or you go tell your spouse about what happened during the day, they're like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Do you need a
and
drink?
also especially for our spouses who have seen some of this evolution, they know that the Tara of 15 years ago, this might have required a trip to the bar, like emergency, and obviously that's not happening now, right? But to sort of see how our spouses see our evolution, right? Like, are you sure you don't need an extra glass of wine, or you want to just order takeout and binge, like, whatever you may have used as coping mechanisms in the past, when you no longer need them to the same degree. It's always really sort of fun to see how they want to comfort us, right? And to your point, even people that you might not know or have other preconceived notions about what our previous coping mechanisms are, when you can just factually report on it, it seems like a lot. And it can seem that you should feel overwhelmed, and that goes back to that resilience practice that you've put in place, and that's awesome. That's a great example.
Yeah, I feel the same way about whether I get exercise in or not. That what I notice, I'm not as good as Angela at noticing when I'm handling things well, but I notice when I'm not working out that things that bother me, like in hindsight, I'm like, that was not that big a deal. And it's really bothering you a lot. So I kind of notice it in the reverse. And it's like, oh, you need to prioritize, because my normal pattern is when I get overwhelmed, I stop working out, which is when I need it most.
That's everybody's normal pattern, I think. I think that's our default.
So frustrating though.
Yes.
But so if I get outside and I walk the dogs, like the day is just better.
Yes.
Just better.
It's true. And there's a couple components there. One is getting outside and walking, and the other is the dogs. Honestly, data has shown that our parasympathetic systems are activated when we're around pets, when we're helping them, when we're taking care of them, when we're petting them. It actually does a lot for us physiologically as well. So that is another thing, unless,
Oh, that's nice. I'll have to remember that when they're barking during a meeting or something.
I'll get you a journal article on that, because there's some data out there. It's fascinating. I love it. Yeah, no, I think that those are both great points. And to your point, Melanie, of like, oh yeah, I really need to be doing that because all this little stuff is bothering me. Some of that too is, and I'm screaming about this book from the mountaintops. I have been for a while, but I don't know if you've happened to have read Burnout. Okay, it's by Emily and Amelia Nagoski, and I read it about 3 months ago, but the Mindful Leaders Academy is doing it for our first book club, so I'm brushing up on it. And the very first chapter, I swear, if every woman I know reads just the first chapter, we will get so much from it, because it's all about completing the stress cycle and the fact that stress is a cycle. And this also plays into mindset as well. But knowing that stress is a cycle, and knowing that there are things that we can do, one of which, and one of the most powerful of which, is exercise, to bring our body through the stress cycle. Just that recognition alone can put us in a position where, when we want to give up exercise because we're getting overwhelmed or because we're getting stressed, we can start to course correct our mindset there and recognize that, like, actually, this is a physical necessity for my body to move through stress, so that then I am more effective, so that then I am enjoying my life, et cetera, et cetera. So I can't recommend the book Burnout by Emily and Amelia Nagoski enough. And it's a really interesting story how that book came about. So, look into it for sure.
Excellent. No, I was able to find it already. So it was easy. It was the first one that popped up. The stress cycle one. Yeah.
I swear, if you just read the first chapter, like the first chapter resonated so much with everyone that I've talked with, that for the book club, I've said, like, come prepared to discuss another chapter. Like, we all know chapter 1 was like really accessible, and it hooks you, right? But the rest of the book still has a lot of really good data and information. So yeah.
Nice. No, and burnout is such a big, I'm in medical education, and it's such a big topic in medicine.
Yes.
My Irish colleagues really turned me on to it and talked about like we have to figure out some way that we can teach students some skills to prevent that future burnout, because doctors and nurses and dentists and just everyone is reporting just sky high levels. And this was pre-pandemic, which I'm sure it's only gotten worse, unless they've learned lessons that some of us have learned, which is, like, if you don't have a commute, maybe you have a little extra time for that walk.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that obviously the medical community has always faced this challenge, and also you'll see some things in that book about being a human giver, and through that, because you're giving and you're in a caretaking field, that also adds additional stress. So yeah, I mean, for those that have been lucky enough to be remote through COVID, maybe they have learned some additional practices. For those that needed to be in person and continue through not only the stress of caring during a pandemic, but also the additional concerns about safety, the additional, facial coverings that they need to wear, the additional testing, all of those things. That was a lot, that still is a lot. And for those people, helping, and however we can help people learn about burnout and how to process the actual stress cycle that leads to burnout, the better off we all will be. And I have to say, so a number of years ago, I burnt out in the corporate world, and then I left corporate to start consulting, and thought that scaling back from 60 hours a week to like 35 all would be good. Nope. 3 months later, burned right out again. So a lot of this information on burnout makes so much sense when I reflect on that experience. And I wish that I had this book at that time.
And you were able, because that would be another lie I would tell myself. Like, you were able to actually work 35 hours.
I was cutting back. I had cut back. I had changed my job, everything, massively, so that I would do that, so that I would only work 35 hours. And I was doing it. And yet I still burnt myself out. So it does not necessarily correlate just to
straight hours.
So
I think you posted on Facebook the thing about wearing busy as a badge.
Yeah.
I think that goes along really well with what you just said about caregiving, because I think particularly as mothers, that like being the self-sacrificing mother is this huge, trophy, when it really is not.
Right.
And I do, my sister gives me trouble all the time, because she's like, you went on another date? Like, when are you hanging out with your kids? I'm like, trust me, they're not sitting at home being like, where's my mommy?
Right.
He's 16. Angela, he's 16. So
yeah. No, I think that you bring up such an important point. And it's funny that you said this. So on Monday, we had our nanny was out sick, our kids were sick. My husband's first day after like 2 months sabbatical, like he was back at work. And so we're both like working at the kitchen table, and I took a call, and I was sitting at the kitchen table, and he's like, hey, Martyr, hey, Martyr, go to the other room. And sometimes people need to kind of call us out when, like, all right, you're right. I don't need to muscle through it here. Everybody's going to live for the next 10 minutes without me being in the room. But yeah, we do have this tendency to feel as though we have to do it all, when in reality we don't, right? And I love that your sister's giving you slack, although I'd at the same time push back and be like, don't you want to go out on dates again? Like,
Absolutely.
yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
You should not feel bad for loving your life and enjoying celebrating this stage of your life with your husband, like by any means, right? Yeah, yeah. And maybe
Absolutely.
even
no, and I think it actually,
go ahead. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I think she did me a favor, because I think those are the same kind of messages I would give myself.
Ah.
But when you hear them outside, you're like, wait a second, that's not right.
Yes, right? Because we would not say something like that to ourselves. Exactly. And I think it also goes towards just society's perception that we should always be giving of ourselves. And that is what we as women do. When in reality, we can't do that. Not if we want to keep going, right?
Right.
Not if we want to love life. Great. All right. Any other questions or thoughts for today before we close out? All right. Well, next week we are talking about the joy of networking, and me, the introvert, will be talking about that. And then the following week we'll be doing a Leading with Your Whole Self workshop. And we've changed how we're running Leading with Your Whole Self, because the whole purpose of this workshop is to help women move from burnout to fulfillment. And so when you're in burnout or feeling that you're approaching burnout, you do not have the feeling that you can commit an hour plus a day to a workshop. So we are doing things very differently with this Leading with Your Whole Self workshop. If you want to learn more about it, please reach out to me or Janessa and we can help to get you registered. And thanks everyone. If you're watching later, hit #replay and we will check in to make sure we answer anyone's questions. Have a great Wednesday. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.